France has lost more than 65 million euros. It has lost what it feared most: control. In the dark nights of Paris, ministers whisper about a haunting, three of the poorest countries that had been despised, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, had dared to rise up and wipe out an empire that had lasted for centuries. This is no longer just news. This is a warning. An empire tottering, a continent awakening. And this story, if you are reading this, is not just about knowing the truth. It is about choosing sides. Because from the moment Air France was expelled from the skies of the Sahel, history changed direction. We are witnessing a showdown between freedom and chains. If you believe this truth needs to be spread, leave a comment, a like, and don't forget to subscribe. This journey has only just begun. Air France has no place in the Sahel. We choose dignity over dependence. Mali's foreign minister, Abdoulaye Diop, told the international press. According to sources, the forced withdrawal from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger alone cost the French airline more than 65 million euros. But that figure is not just money. It is a symbol of the end of an era. The airports that were once considered economic bases for Paris now belong to countries that are rewriting their own destiny. France has asked to return. But the Sahel is no longer on its knees. And from this moment on, the question arises, what happens when an empire is forced to face those it once despised? The answer begins in the next part. Paris is shocked. The seats of power in the Élysée Palace are no longer as secure as before. 65 million euros is just the tip of the iceberg, but what keeps France up at night is not the money, it is the signs of an empire collapsing before its eyes. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, three names that the Western media once ignored, have suddenly become global icons. With a cold decision, expel Air France, close the base, remove humiliating ties. They have launched a direct blow to the heart of Paris. Imagine the scene: runways that once bore the silhouettes of French-flagged planes now empty. The people of the Sahel look up to the sky. For the first time in centuries, without the shadow of their ruler. It is not just a political moment. It is a change in the soul of a people. France reacted immediately. Ministers held emergency meetings. MEPs shouted in the National Assembly, "We have to go back." The Sahel is the heart of France's strategic interests. But the lingering question is, how to go back, when the people themselves have closed the door? For decades, Paris has maintained the illusion that Africa cannot live without it. Air France, the French army, energy companies, banks, all were built like invisible strings to bind. But in just a few months, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have proven otherwise. Mali asserted, "We are ready to cooperate with any country that respects our dignity and sovereignty." Niger added, "France no longer has a right of precedence." And Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, declared, "We will never again allow any power to usurp the future of our children." These declarations were more than words. They were the beginning of a full-scale revolt against the shackles of neocolonialism. On the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey, tens of thousands of young people took to the streets carrying national flags, chanting anti-French slogans. They no longer feared military threats or economic sanctions. The Sahel's Gen Z generation, the generation that grew up with the internet and the truth exposed, is now the vanguard. On social media, videos of Air France's withdrawal went viral. Many called it the Sahel's second Independence Day. A Malian journalist wrote, "If our fathers' generation won the flag, this generation will take back the skies." But in Paris, humiliation turned to anger. The French president was under enormous pressure from the tycoons, from energy and aviation corporations. They didn't just lose money. They lost influence. And losing influence in the Sahel meant losing part of the soul of what is called global France. If we don't regain our foothold in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, our rivals like Russia, China, Turkey will take our place. Then France will have nothing to do with the big game, the advisors whisper. This is the deepest fear: the Sahel will no longer be a dependent land, but will become part of a multipolar world order, where Paris is just a small voice, no longer the deciding power. While France is confused, the three Sahel countries are accelerating the consolidation of their alliance. From establishing a common military defense alliance to discussing a joint bank, they are building a political economic structure independent of Paris. They call it the Free Sahel Alliance, a concept that once existed only in dreams. Now it is a reality. And every step they take is a knife cutting deeper into the illusion of French hegemony. We need to pause and look deeper. This is not just an economic or political dispute. This is a story of dignity. A people can be poor. A country can be deprived. But when dignity is trampled, when the sky is taken, when resources are drained, then rise is inevitable. That is the law of history. What is happening in the Sahel today is a repetition of great historical pages, from the Haitian Revolution, to the anti-colonial uprisings in Asia, to the independence movements across the African continent in the 20th century. The Sahel is rewriting the story of the 21st century. If you believe that this is not just news, but a wake-up call for all of Africa, share your thoughts in the comments. Let the world know that the courage of the Sahel does not stand alone. Despite the loss of face, France has not completely withdrawn. Secret diplomatic channels have been opened. Promises of aid, investment, and educational cooperation have been offered as bait. But the Sahel leaders understand, all these promises carry within them the shadow of dependence. At the same time, France has also intensified its information warfare. Major newspapers have launched a series of articles slandering Traoré, Goïta, Tiani, calling them dictators, military regimes. They hope to shake the support of the people. But in the Sahel, people have seen too much. They no longer trust the strange pens from Paris. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger are facing countless difficulties: terrorism, poverty, international pressure. But there is one thing they have never had before: faith. Faith that destiny is no longer written by Paris, but by themselves. A Nigerese student said on television, "We may be poor, but at least for the first time we are poor in freedom, not in humiliation." And this is France's nightmare, an Africa that is poor but free, instead of falsely rich but dependent. Because once the seeds of freedom are sown, they will grow all over the continent. From Kinshasa to Khartoum, from Dakar to Dar es Salaam. The whispers have begun: if the Sahel can do it, why can't we? France understands. And that is why they don't just want to go back, they need to go back, at all costs. But can they? When history has changed course, Paris is no longer patient. After the humiliating defeats, the roar from the corridors of power begins to echo: we must return to the Sahel. At any cost. But the Sahel, where people once knelt, has now become a fortress of will. And at this very moment, the world is facing an inevitable battle, a dying empire. Facing a continent just waking up. In the closed sessions of the French National Assembly, far-right lawmakers angrily pound the table: we cannot lose the three most strategic countries in Africa to others. Apply economic pressure, blockade, even military sanctions if necessary. On the other side, in Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey, the three flags fly together. Traoré, Goïta, Tiani sit down. Not only to discuss defense but also to outline a common strategy: energy autonomy, a joint bank, international cooperation based on the principle of equality. These are no longer temporary steps. This is the long-term path, the path to liberating the Sahel from neo-colonialism. France counterattacked with a familiar weapon: economics. French energy companies abruptly terminated contracts. European banks put pressure on, blocking international transactions with the three Sahel countries. They hoped to suffocate the fledgling economy, push the people into poverty, and thereby create pressure to overthrow the revolutionary governments. But this time, Paris miscalculated. On the streets of Bamako, people lined up to buy domestic food, chanting, "We would rather starve in freedom than live full in humiliation." Those words shook the whole of Africa. Because when people choose freedom over bread, no foreign power can easily subdue them. When the economy did not work, Paris opened another front: the media. A series of major newspapers have called Traoré, Goïta, Tiani military dictators and threats to democracy. European TV channels have shown continuous images of hardship in the Sahel, painting it as if the people are rebelling against the government. But the internet has changed the game. Sahel youth no longer rely on distant lenses. They record the truth themselves, posting it on social media: images of young volunteers digging flood-proof ditches, mothers handing out rice to soldiers, children painting national flags on walls. The truth spreads faster than any lie. A Burkina Faso student said in a video shared millions of times, "They call us poor, hopeless. But they are afraid. Because we are not afraid anymore." History has witnessed similar moments. When India stood up to the British. When Algeria declared independence in the face of bullets. When Vietnam defeated a mighty empire. Each time, the world witnessed the same rule: the conqueror always believed himself invincible. Until the people rose up and turned the tables. Today's Sahel is a repetition, but also an upgrade of that rule. Not just one country rebelling, but 3 countries joining hands. Not just the desire for independence, but a vision to build a multipolar world, where Africa has an equal voice. If you are reading this and believe that the sacrifice of the Sahel is a reminder to humanity that freedom does not come cheap, please leave a comment. Share this article so that more people understand that history is being rewritten every day, right before our eyes. Meanwhile, leaked intelligence reports suggest that France has not ruled out covert intervention. There are shadowy meetings on the border, where some armed groups are financed and armed. The goal, to destabilize, to create an image of a Sahel in chaos, to justify Paris' return. But this time, the Sahel is prepared. Security forces are restructured. A coalition defense system is deployed. And most importantly, the population is alert. Any infiltration plots are exposed before they take root. In Ouagadougou, an elderly street vendor says on the radio, "We don't need France. We just want our children to live with their heads held high." In Bamako, a group of young people have created a one-person, one-brick movement to build schools from community funds. In Niamey, young soldiers have volunteered to take pay cuts to buy medicine for hospitals. Small actions but with enormous power, the power of a people determined not to return to slavery. French corporations scream. French politicians blame each other. But everyone has to face the truth: the Sahel is no longer France's backyard. And no matter how hard France tries, the rift in this relationship is too deep to heal. The world is watching. From the United Nations to the African Union, from BRICS to ASEAN, people are starting to see the Sahel with different eyes, no longer as a victim, but as a subject. The question now is no longer, can France return, but how much will France pay to try to return? And more importantly, how much will the Sahel have to sacrifice to defend its choice? That confrontation is getting closer than ever. The shadow of a new battle is looming over the Sahel. But this time, the oppressed are not alone. They have faith, they have allies. And they have history on their side. The great winds of global politics often start with small, barely perceptible tremors. But in the Sahel, as Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger all built a wall against Paris, those tremors quickly turned into a storm. In Paris, the Élysée trembled not because of a lack of electricity, but because of a cold truth: those once considered weak had become the center of the continent's destiny. The numbers are haunting France. The €65 million lost from Air France is just the tip of the iceberg. Behind that lie billions of euros in minerals, trade, and military contracts that have gone up in smoke. French energy companies that once controlled Niger's uranium, the lifeblood of France's nuclear arsenal, now face the prospect of being completely eliminated. And when Niger began to negotiate with Russia, China, even Turkey, Paris understood that it was losing its nuclear lung. But the Sahel did not attack only with economics. It attacked with symbols, with the fire of will. The rallies in Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey were not just slogans. They became the universities of a generation where people learned that sovereignty is not a distant concept, but breath, food, dignity. And that is what puts France in a dangerous position. This is not just a war between government and government, but between empire and people. In the previous part, we saw Paris screaming for its return, like a person expelled from a home that once considered its own. But in this part, we must look at the bigger picture: when France loses the Sahel, who will fill the void? The answer is a new axis, an emerging order. Russia is sending military advisors, providing helicopters, air defense. Turkey is expanding drone contracts. China is getting involved in mining and infrastructure. And most surprisingly, other African countries, Ghana, Guinea, even South Africa, are quietly watching and pondering: if they can do it, what about us? We are witnessing a sovereignty epidemic spreading across the continent. But make no mistake, France is not giving up easily. It has tried its old cards: economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, military threats. But unlike a decade ago, the three Sahel countries are no longer alone. When ECOWAS was pressed by Paris to sanction it, millions of Nigerians, Ghanaians, Senegalese took to the streets in protest. They shouted, "We do not want to fight our brothers on foreign orders." And what about the military? As France contemplated a humanitarian intervention scenario, the images of Russian soldiers training Burkina's army, Bayraktar drones patrolling the skies over Mali, and Chinese arms convoys crossing the Niger desert put those plans in jeopardy. An attack would mean global confrontation. It was the first time in decades that Paris felt like an outsider on a continent it once called a former colony. But the key was not just political or military. It was something deeper: the awakening of Africa's Gen Z. In Ouagadougou, university students wrote slogans like, "We were not born to be slaves of uranium." In Bamako, rappers turned the Air France ban into a viral social media hit, turning anger into music, into art of resistance. In Niamey, thousands of young people organized classes in sovereign economics, learning how to manage resources, learning how to break the chains of IMF debt. Imagine a generation that not only holds guns, but also pens, microphones, technology. It is a weapon that Paris has never faced. In Paris, some parliamentarians warned the French president, "We are losing the whole of Africa. If we do not return now, it will be too late." But the paradox here is, the more France tries to return, the stronger the resistance. The more it imposes, the more it exposes its own weakness. So, this part brings us to the harsh question: can a dying empire save itself through despair? Because in its dying moments, the tyrant is often the most dangerous. Paris could choose the path of negotiation, accepting the new truth. But history shows that empires rarely bow their heads. And when the ego is wounded, they can choose the path of destruction. Stop for a moment to think, why does a figure of 65 million euros shake Paris so much? Because it is not just a loss of money. It is a breach in the fortress, into which a whole torrent of truth is pouring. If Air France can be blocked, then EDF, Orano, Ballor, can also be blocked. If France can be forced to withdraw, then the US, the EU can too. From a decision by three countries, a domino effect is waiting to happen. And when the dominoes start to fall, no one can stop them. This is part 5, the part of the big questions. Of the undercurrents reaching a climax. Because ahead, in part 6, there will be an unexpected turn. Maybe it is a betrayal right in the heart of the Sahel. Maybe it is a secret plot by Paris, the US, or a third power. But it will certainly be the decisive blow to see whether the Sahel will stand firm on its path to sovereignty. Loudspeaker if you feel that this story is not just about politics, but about the fate of an entire continent. Please share, comment, and subscribe so that together we can continue to uncover the mystery. Because history is being written right now. And each of us is a part of it. Every empire does not collapse because of an enemy from the outside. Often the fatal blow comes from within, from the hands that once pledged allegiance. And in the Sahel, when Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger are on the verge of victory, that darkness suddenly appears. A secret report leaked from Bamako shows that there are generals trained in Paris, who are still quietly in touch with French officials. Some figures in Niger's economic apparatus still whisper about the need for France to maintain financial flows. And in Ouagadougou, rumors spread of an assassination plot to sow chaos, paving the way for the return of foreign powers. This twist sent shivers down the continent. The enemy was not just outside the gates, but within the ranks. Paris knew very well, it could not confront them head-on, because the Sahel now had international allies and people power. Instead, it turned to its familiar weapons: divide, bribe, betray. It was a strategy that had caused many liberation movements to collapse in the past. But there is a crucial difference. The new generation of leaders in the Sahel, Traoré in Burkina Faso, Goïta in Mali, Tiani in Niger, are not only vigilant, but they have turned the crisis into an opportunity. When news leaked, they did not hide it. They brought it out in the open to the people. They said it outright: someone wants to sell us out. Someone is dreaming of the return of Paris. But this truth does not weaken us, it strengthens us, because the traitor has been exposed. Instead of being shaken, the wave of popular support grew even stronger. Hundreds of thousands took to the streets in Niamey, Bamako, Ouagadougou, chanting, "We will not sell our souls. The Sahel will not kneel." And the twist turned into a political counterattack. France thought it could spark chaos. But this exposure gave the Sahel a reason to tighten its ranks, purge its ranks, and further consolidate the alliance. The world was stunned. A plot of betrayal, instead of destroying the movement, became the glue that held it together. Just as steel becomes stronger only through fire. The Sahel emerged from this crisis with a stronger belief in the path of sovereignty. This moment brings us to the brink of a fateful moment. France has not given up. The powers that be are still lurking. But the Sahel has proven a truth: when the people rise up together, even betrayal cannot bury the desire for freedom. And now, as a new dawn breaks over the desert, the only question that remains is, will the storm of the Sahel wipe out only Paris? Or will it spread, sweeping away other empires that tremble before the power of an awakened continent? Loudspeaker, if you believe this truth must be spread, comment, share, and subscribe. The Sahel has passed through fire, and in that fire the steel of freedom has been forged. The intrigues of Paris, the treacherous hands in the dark, the empty promises of stability, all have crumbled before the power of one truth: sovereignty cannot be bought. Today, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger are no longer remote-controlled lands. They are the flag. They are the drumbeat that urges the continent. And every citizen, from the markets of Niamey to the fields of Bamako, from the Sahara Desert to the streets of Ouagadougou, knows, this war is not just about economics or diplomacy. It is a battle for dignity and survival. And we, who are watching, cannot stand aside. Loudspeaker, if the spirit of the Sahel touches your heart, please like, comment and subscribe. Write down your thoughts as a mark in the history that is unfolding. Because history is not written by those who stand aside, but by those who dare to enter. Now it is our turn. Let us keep this flame burning, so that when people in the future recall the day the Sahel rose up, they will say, "We did not turn our backs."